Before we get into today's episode, I have an extra fun announcement. On October 8th, we are having an Undiet Cookbook celebration party. We are marking the 10th anniversary of the release of the little book that went on to become a #1 bestseller, won gold at the Taste Canada Awards, and ultimately was the textbook for the Culinary Nutrition Expert Program. To mark this momentous occasion, I am offering an absolutely free live online culinary nutrition cooking demo, or how I used to call it, a cooking party. You want to be there. All you have to do is subscribe to my Substack or get your name on a list, any list. You can fill out any of the opt-in forms at fun.meghantelpner.com, and you will receive the formal login details to join this live online, totally free culinary nutrition extravaganza. It will be live only, so mark your calendar, October 8th, 12 p.m. Eastern Time. You want to be there. I'm going to be cooking up a couple of the recipes from the Undiet Cookbook. We'll be connecting as a community, old school styles. I cannot wait to see you there. Oh, I'm also going to be offering for a 3-day limited time the absolute best offer we've ever had on the Culinary One Pass. This is your one-stop shop to access all of the courses I created for the Academy of Culinary Nutrition over the last 10 years. So your next step is to go to fun.meghantelpner.com, opt in anywhere on the website, or subscribe to my Substack, and you will get the information to join. Invite all your friends. We got room for 500. I hope someone shows up. I really am excited to put on the old hat or the vintage dress, as the case may be, and do a little song and dance for vibrant health, vibrant living, courageous pivoting, living from the heart, and doing that with you there. All right, let's get on with today's episode. We're back again on the Courageous Pivot podcast. Welcome back. This is the podcast where we explore bold, heart-led changes in work, life, and everything in between. I'm your host, Meghan Telpner. And today we are going to be diving into something that has crept up for me and so many people I've been speaking with, and that is grief. Before we get into today's episode, I wanted to share a few personal updates. So I have been obviously deep into the topic of courageous pivots since I began this project, which was back in April, May 2025. I was also thinking about these topics and doing a bit of writing long before I even started recording it. That combined with the interviews that I've been doing, listening back to my episodes weeks, sometimes even months after they were written, it would be impossible for me not to actually be influenced further in my own life by all of this information and explorations and ideas. I have begun, and by the time this is released, may have even shared publicly the pivots I'm making in moving forward with something that has been in my heart probably since I was a child. However, there was so much fear around the practicalities of life that these were just things I never pursued or didn't make time to pursue or legitimately didn't have time to do because everything else just felt more urgent and more important. And it was specifically for me, episode 13, about the sunk cost fallacy and the idea of maybe the thing we're holding on to so tightly is really where we need to loosen the grip. That had me rethinking a lot of things about what I'm hanging on to in my business, in my life, in my belief set that I'm loosening the grip on. And it's been a really joyful process. I don't know how long this podcast will go on. It was never intended to be a forever thing. It was originally written and designed to be a precursor to a book where I would share the insights from our guests, share the insights I explore. But now I don't know. I don't know if that's what I will pursue because these other things have come up that are calling to me and that I really want to give time and attention and focus to. So all that to say, who knows? But the practice of being in your heart, of staying attuned to your own alignment is ongoing once it begins. And it truly is a path of deep, resonant, joyful freedom. That's not to say there isn't stressful moments, that there aren't difficult times, that it isn't hard, but it always just feels right, if that makes sense. And if you're in it or experiencing it, I know that it will make sense. And something that I've noticed in speaking to so many different people who've had so many different types of pivots that I was trying to check boxes of different categories of pivots. Everyone expresses this freedom that when you have the courage to be yourself, to be in alignment with yourself, life becomes just overall easier to exist within, even in amongst the challenges we all live with every day. On that note, let's get to today's episode. The silent grief of growth, letting go of the life you built. Boy, oh boy. So this is not the kind of grief you might expect. This isn't really about a tangible loss. Typically, it can be, but that's not really what I'm focusing on here. It's not how we normally frame grief. This is a quieter, more abstract kind. It's the silent grief that comes with positive change. The mourning that happens when you outgrow your old life, who you were, the dreams you had, the comfort of being that person you thought you knew inside and out. If you've been following along on this journey, you know we've explored the whispers that call us to change, the courage to sit in the unknown, and even the sacred act of letting go. In episode 13, which I mentioned, we talk about the sunk cost fallacy, why we hold on to things simply because we've invested so much already rather than asking what might serve us best now. Now, that may include our former identities, interests, focus. We might be attached to former relevance, having clear goals and objectives. Essentially, maybe we're just hanging on to that sense of having a clear purpose. Grieving that loss is what we're talking about today. Because even when you intellectually understand that it's time to let go, even when you know in your heart that you've outgrown your former life, and even if you're happy and excited about where you've landed, there's still a mourning process. And that grief? Well, recognizing that grief is necessary. Let me start with a question that might sound strange. Have you ever felt guilty for being sad about letting go of something you chose to release? Maybe you left a successful career that no longer aligned with who you'd become. Maybe you ended a relationship that was good but not great. Maybe you moved away from a home or city that worked but wasn't right anymore. And then, in the aftermath, you found yourself unexpectedly grieving. Not just missing the security or the familiarity, but genuinely mourning the death of who you used to be, the dreams that belonged to that person, the identity that once fit so perfectly that gave you a set of parameters to focus on and live by, but now feels like clothes from a decade ago. I will tell you, I've never loved seeing myself in video, which is tricky for sure since I built a business requiring me to be on video. And even now with this podcast, I had to put an end to the video clips from the solo episodes going on Instagram because I just hated seeing them. So this is relevant now, but when I watch the videos that I made 5 or 10 years ago, I find them intensely cringy. I was who I was then, but I'm not her now. I can see the essence of who I am today in that person, but the full expression was not there. It's because we are, in fact, always becoming. But that is sort of the easy, superficial part of this grief, being like, oh, there's that person on display. That's not who I am now. I'll just live with what was there. But when I look at old photos and videos, what I also see is a woman who was so wildly excited by what was being created. I see someone who was driven, who was motivated, and ultimately incredibly energized by the growth of what was being built. Though going through the business, I rarely actually knew what I was doing. What I was clear on was the mountain I was climbing, and every day, with full enthusiasm, I tied up those boots and was ready to climb, ready to hit another milestone. Then what happened? Well, for me, basically, I arrived. I got to where I wanted to be. And truly, it has been, overall, glorious. But what actually happens when you've checked all the boxes? What happens the next day? You got there, you did it, you made the call, you did the big thing, the big announcement, whatever it was. What do you do the day after? Well, that's when it's time, in theory, to reimagine it all. We think it's time to move on to the next thing. Everyone always asks, what are you going to do next? The thing is, we don't take the time to grieve, and part of this transition has to be letting go of the journey that you've been on until now. And here's what no one tells us: growth also requires death. Not physical death, but the death of former versions of ourselves, of ideals, of purpose, of all those things I mentioned before. It's the death of dreams that have been reached or that no longer align. The death of identities that once served us but now constrain us or just don't make sense in the context of the present moment or the present world. And when something dies, whether we choose it or not, grief is the natural response. For me, it didn't happen right away, as I'm excellent at keeping busy. Very busy. But then when my days opened up without plans, there was a part of me that was mourning where I once had been. Not the business, but the version of me who had built it. The dreams that 28-year-old Meghan had when I started. I missed waking up with that keen sense of drive and purpose, knowing exactly what I had to do. And that grief caught me completely off guard. Because here's the thing about this particular type of grief. It's a strange mourning that's due simply to changes. And when you tell people you made a big change to follow your heart, it's expected that you will always, from then on out, be at a place of ease. But as you've heard so many guests share, there is struggle there too. There's the growth that comes from transition, moving, starting over, rediscovery. Even if it all came from the heart, it may not be joyful in every moment. I will tell you, I'm going off script for a minute, it has taken me more than 2 years. It was over the summer of 2025 that I finally was able to ease in and free myself from having plans every day. I actually had to ask my husband, Josh, to stop asking me what my plans were for the day. The plan was to have no plan and see what happened. And that was exquisitely challenging. Change is hard, and the feelings of grief does not mean you're doing it wrong. It means you're being human. One of the most challenging aspects of this grief is the professional identity crisis. I was recently speaking with a girlfriend who sold her business a year ago. Like me, she hustled her heart out for 20 years, and then she sold. She was out, she was free in every sense. But of course, there's a loss there too, even with what really is a huge win. And the challenge we discussed, and let me tell you, we had this conversation while I was sitting on a sun lounger at 2 p.m. on a Wednesday crocheting an emotional support chicken, while she was driving to a work meeting because she took on a contract to work more because she didn't know what else to do. But the question is this, and this is the one we were discussing: who are you when you're not what you do? Or put another way, who are you when what you did is no longer relevant? In our culture, our work often becomes our identity. We don't just have jobs, we are our jobs. We're married or we're single. There's these titles we give ourselves. We're teachers, we're doctors, we're lawyers, we're entrepreneurs, we're stay-at-home moms. The first question at any party is, what do you do? And we've been conditioned to have a crisp, impressive answer, the old elevator pitch. But what happens when you no longer do the things that defined you? What happens when you can't answer that question anymore without a 10-minute explanation that leaves everyone confused, maybe even yourself? I still struggle with this. When people ask what I do, I often fumble because I don't know right now. What I'm trying to be is a human being whose worth isn't tied to her productivity. But saying that when I run into a former student who asks what I'm up to these days doesn't quite land right. And this is where the grief gets complicated. Because you're not just mourning the work itself or the relationship, you're mourning the clarity it provided, the easy answer. This is my partner. This is my job. This is who I am. This is what I do. There's a sense of purpose that comes with having a clearly defined role. There's respect that comes with a prestigious title or successful business or long-term marriage. You're mourning the version of you that fit so neatly into society's boxes. This is the you that made sense to other people. The you that could be easily categorized, understood, and who impressed others. Now, that same girlfriend who I had that conversation with, we were both on the list of Canada's top female entrepreneurs back in 2016. That felt important then. It was important then to both of us. It was a seal of approval that we were succeeding by those important metrics. And that was also 9 years ago. it's sort of not relevant anymore. I once was one of the top 100 most successful people in Canada. I'm not that now. Maybe I am, really. I mean, I am by my own metrics. I succeeded, and now I'm living a life in alignment fully with my heart. That is success, but that's not going to get me a ranking in a magazine. And again, that ranking now would not matter. So it gets a little complicated. That grief is valid. This loss is real. The identity that once served you so well deserves to be honored even as you release it. Here's something crucial that I want you to understand as I'm also trying to understand it. Some of the hardest grief to process comes from releasing things that were genuinely good. That version of yourself you're mourning, she or he built something beautiful. We succeeded by all the right standards. We deserve appreciation, not judgment, especially from ourselves for both who we were then and who we are now. Maybe we're just growing up. Still, I suspect it never stops. This is why this grief is so complex. We're not mourning something was wrong. We're mourning something that was right for who we were then. It's just not what we want now. It may have changed. You may have changed. Likely everything changed. And that's okay. That's growth. That's evolution. That's the natural progression of a life lived consciously. This is what I mean by the grief of growth. You're not just letting go of failures or disappointments. You're releasing successes that no longer align with who you've become or what you've achieved and have since moved on from. Releasing the old dreams, even when they're replaced by new ones, can trigger grief. If you're a ceremony or ritual type person, I want you to consider writing that old version of yourself a letter of gratitude for what you learned from those goals and dreams, from that life that is no longer. Acknowledge why those past dreams made sense at the time, why building that business or climbing that ladder or being in that relationship was so important. What needs did it meet? What fears did it address? What values did it express? This isn't about judging those dreams as shallow or misguided or thinking of them with the knowledge you have now. This is about understanding that they served a purpose for who you were then. And then, shazam, release it all. You might write something like, your dreams of success served me beautifully, but I'm ready now for dreams of alignment. Or maybe, thank you for building something I could be proud of that could support the life that I now live. Now I'm called to build something that feeds my soul in a different way. You can keep the letter as a marker of this transition. You can burn it as a ritual of release, bury it in the garden as a symbol of transformation. You could choose whatever feels right for you. The important thing is that you've given yourself permission to let it go, to move forward. You've honored what was while creating space for what's becoming. The grief of growth is one of the most overlooked aspects of transformation. We are so focused on becoming who we are meant to be that we forget to properly say goodbye to who we were. But here's what I've learned. The tenderness with which you treat your former self is the same tenderness you'll need as you continue to evolve. Because this won't be the last time you outgrow a version of yourself. With all of my guests, it's been so clear, one after another, one great pivot after another, they tend to keep coming. Once you brave that unknown, it becomes more and more comfortable to be there, so you enter it more often. If you're living consciously, if you're continuing to grow, there will be other seasons of release, other moments of grief, other times when you need to let go of something good to make space for something better, something more aligned with who you've become. And each time, you'll be grateful you learned how to grieve with grace. Learning to let go with grace isn't just about saying goodbye to your former professional self or former relationship. It's practice for all the future versions of you that you'll eventually need to release as you continue growing into who you're meant to be. So be gentle with yourself as you navigate this transition. Honor the grief. Don't rush through it or try to positive think your way past it. Let it move through you at its own pace. Because on the other side of this grief is something beautiful. The space to become who you are now, freed from the expectations of who you used to be. I want to thank you for taking this journey with me today. If this episode resonated, please share it with someone who might be in their own season of gentle letting go. And remember, your grief is valid, your growth is sacred, and who you're becoming is worth the tender work of saying goodbye to who you were. Until next time, keep listening to your heart, honor your transitions, and trust that everything you release makes space for something more aligned to emerge. Thank you for joining me today, and have a beautiful rest of your day.